You literally cannot walk into a PACU without prior perioperative or critical care experience, right? That built-in gatekeeping is exactly why PACU travel contracts pay as incredibly well as they do. So let's get right to it. Today, we're bringing you an elite market briefing on the 2026 PACU Travel Nurse Salary Guide. No fluff, just the raw data you need to know your true worth before you negotiate that next move.
Here's the roadmap for today. We'll kick things off with the 2026 baseline, then dive into the matchup against the OR and Cath Lab. We'll look at location and taxes, break down the CPAN multiplier, and wrap it all up with a really critical pre-signing checklist.
All right, Section 1, the 2026 baseline. Let's look at what PACU actually pays.
So, to know your true worth, it's absolutely vital to rely on agency-free, independent rate tracking. And that brings us to our magic number. $2,189. That is the current 2026 national average weekly rate for PACU travel nurses. Now, to put that into perspective, that's a solid 5% increase from earlier this year. When you compare this to your average staff PACU nurse making around $96,800 a year, these travel premiums are running heavily above that baseline. We're talking routinely 30 to 50% higher once you factor in those tax-free stipends.
But, averages only tell us part of the story, right? So let's break down the actual ranges. A standard 13-week hospital contract is typically going to land right in that $2,100 to $2,600 mid-range. But if you step into a high-demand state, or maybe a level 1 trauma center, you're pushing $2,700 to $3,200 a week. And if you're willing to jump into a crisis or rapid response contract, oh man, those top-tier spots can easily push past $3,700, actually hitting that $3,800 plus mark.
Moving on to Section 2, the matchup. It's PACU versus OR versus Cath Lab.
Okay, these three top-tier perioperative specialties get compared constantly, and understanding this financial matchup is huge for your career planning. PACU runs from $1,800 to $3,200 a week. The operating room runs slightly higher at $2,000 to $3,400, which honestly makes sense. It accurately reflects the added complexity of intraoperative work. But take a look at Cath Lab. It tops both of them at $2,200 to $3,600. Why the big bump? Well, largely because Cath Lab nurses carry mandatory on-call obligations that PACU nurses generally just don't have to deal with.
And honestly, that brings us right to the PACU advantage, because it's not always just about securing the absolute highest gross dollar amount. The real trade-off here is that PACU offers meaningfully more scheduling predictability and significantly lower call exposure. It is a massive quality of life upgrade. Actually, so much so that many highly skilled perioperative travelers will actively choose PACU over those higher-paying OR or Cath Lab contracts strictly for this lifestyle benefit. You just can't put a price on sanity, right?
Section 3, location levers and tax traps. Let's run the real math.
Okay, location is without a doubt the single biggest lever for moving your pay rate. States like California, Washington, Hawaii, New York, and Massachusetts consistently lead the pack. But I gotta warn you about a real cautionary tale, the California tax trap. You might look at a massive gross pay rate in Cali and get ready to pack your bags, but hold on, California's income tax can run up to 13.3%. So what does that actually mean for your wallet? It means a $3,200 California package can net out almost exactly the same as a $2,700 Washington contract once those state taxes hit your paycheck. The golden rule here, don't just chase the gross number. Always calculate your net.
Aside from location, the actual facility type heavily impacts your package. Level 1 trauma and academic medical centers will pretty much always pay you more than a standard community hospital. On the flip side, ambulatory surgery centers, or ASCs, offer super predictable hours with zero call. But yeah, you'll trade that for a slightly lower rate. And here is the absolute non-negotiable bottom line. Most contracts are going to require 1 to 2 years of recent PACU-specific experience. Facilities will absolutely prioritize ICU or OR backgrounds, but general med-surg or step-down experience, it simply won't cut it for these roles.
Which brings us to Section 4, the CPAN multiplier. How to separate from the pack.
Look, if you want to secure those top-tier base offers in a super competitive market, this right here is your ultimate leverage tool. CPAN stands for Certified Post-Anesthesia Nurse, administered through ABP-ANC. Now, while it isn't universally required for every single contract out there, it is the ultimate differentiator. Picture a facility manager staring at a massive stack of qualified applicants. Holding a CPAN makes you the preferred candidate, hands down. Plus, it strongly backs up your ability to negotiate a much higher base offer.
What's really fascinating here are the strict exam requirements, because they highlight a very real market reality. To even sit for the CPAN, you need 1,200 hours of direct phase I post-anesthesia experience within the prior 2 years. And that's a crucial distinction, folks. PACU travel work almost exclusively demands high-acuity phase I experience, the immediate post-op period. Phase 2, the lower acuity discharge lounge, rarely commands the same premium. So pro tip, assume your contract is for phase I unless stated otherwise. Tack on your mandatory ACLS, BLS, and PALS if you're working pediatrics, and you are positioned flawlessly.
All right, Section 5, Pre-Signing Checklist. Let's talk defense.
Think of this as your personal defense system, an ironclad checklist designed to protect your license and your income before you ever sign on the dotted line. First up, most PACU units run 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 ratios during Phase 1. Get written clarification on these strict patient ratios. An understaffed PACU isn't just a personal inconvenience, it's a massive patient safety issue. Second, explicitly clarify the on-call pay structures. You should typically expect $4 to $8 an hour strictly for being on call, plus a separate, higher activation rate for when you actually get called in. Third, confirm your guaranteed hours language. PACU volume swings hard when facilities cancel elective cases, and you need that language to survive a slow surgical stretch without taking a massive hit to your income. Finally, get safe, explicit float restrictions in writing, especially if you aren't comfortable being suddenly moved to pre-op, same-day surgery, or step down when the census unexpectedly drops.
Which leads us to our final and maybe most important question. Are you leaving money on the table in your next contract? PACU is honestly one of the most accessible, high-paying specialties out there if you have the right clinical background. It offers strong pay, incredible scheduling predictability, and a very clear certification path to boost your rate. So I challenge you to verify your upcoming offers against independent rate tracking. Use the objective market intelligence we've covered today to maximize your next move, protect your hard-earned license, and make sure you are getting exactly what your highly specialized skills are worth.